Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to today's webinar. We're just going to take a minute to get started. We're just going to let students join and then we're going to go ahead and get started. Hey everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. Before I give it over to Jaime to talk about PhD programs, I'm just going to introduce myself and my organization for a minute. My name is Natalia Khan and I work at Education USA as an advisor. What is USCFB? USCFB, it's the United States Education Foundation in Pakistan. In Pakistan, Education USA is housed within USCFB. We have our flagship program, which is the Fulbright program. It is a fully funded scholarship for master's and PhD students. If you or anyone you know is interested in it, you can visit the USCFB page, and we have all the information about the Fulbright program. As I mentioned earlier, Education USA in Pakistan is housed within USCFB. At Education USA, we are a part of the US Department of State. We have our offices in Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad. Our office in Lahore is located inside FC College in Lahore. We at Education USA provide students with accurate, current, and comprehensive information. We help them by finding their best fit university. We offer resource guidance and advice. These are just going to be some of the services that we offer. We have free in-house sessions. We have free workshops for the GRE, the SAT, the TOEFL. We have a resource library, as I mentioned earlier. Our office is located inside FC College in Lahore, and that's where our library is located. We have GRE and SAT updated books. If you want to come use that, or if you just want a quiet place to study, you are more than welcome. And our most famous service is the one-on-one advising service. If you go to the Education USA Pakistan website, under advising services, you can register on that website and you will be assigned an advisor. We are 4 advisors here in the Lahore office, and you will be assigned one of us, and then we will help you throughout your application process with any help you need or if you have any questions, and all of our services are free of cost. This is our email address if you have any questions about the webinar today, or if you ever have any questions in the future, you are welcome to reach out to us. And with that, I will end my presentation and I will invite Jaime to give her presentation about PhD programs.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Jamie Mowry. I am the recruiter for graduate programs at Texas Tech University. We are located in Lubbock, Texas. And I am going to talk a little bit about how to decide if a PhD is right for you. So, when you are thinking about pursuing a PhD, kind of that PhD process, there are definitely some questions that you should ask yourself as you're sort of embarking on this journey to getting a PhD. You're going to want to know what a PhD actually is, who gets a PhD, why should you pursue a PhD, and how to get started with your PhD journey. After I finish going over my presentation, I will open it up for a Q&A. So if you do have any questions, you can put those in the Q&A box here on Zoom, and I will answer them after my presentation. So starting with what is a PhD? This is a big question. Obviously, if you're considering getting the degree, it's important to know what that entails. PhD is a type of doctoral degree. Um, Doctoral degrees are the highest honor awarded in most fields. There are a lot of different types of doctoral degrees. Things like a MD, a medical doctor, is a doctoral degree. A JD, which is a law degree in the United States, that's also a doctoral degree. PhD specifically stands for Doctor of Philosophy. PhDs can be many subjects besides just philosophy. The Doctor of Philosophy, the philosophy there refers more to the style of learning and kind of the comprehensive nature of the degree. So you can be a PhD in history, you can be a PhD in engineering, you can be a PhD in English. So at Texas Tech, we have over 60 PhD programs, and so you can truly get a PhD in just about anything. The subjects of a PhD are typically pretty broad, so you would be a PhD in biology, but then you would narrow down your research and your focus through your research and your dissertation process. PhDs are research focused. There's a pretty significant emphasis on creating knowledge. So this is kind of one of the big differences between a PhD and maybe a master's degree or a bachelor's degree is in a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, there's a lot of emphasis on consuming knowledge, on learning the field, on kind of gaining that background. Once you start a PhD program, the emphasis shifts from learning as much as you can to contributing and creating information. So doing research and participating kind of in the discourse around your subject. PhD programs will culminate in a dissertation, which is an extended independent research project that could be anywhere from 200 to 500 pages, depending on your subject. So there's definitely an emphasis on research. So if you like research or you have big questions that you want to answer, that's something to consider when you are making a decision on whether or not to pursue your PhD. So, a quick comparison of a master's versus a PhD. A master's program here in the United States is going to take a year or 2 years, depending on the program. It's going to be 30 to 45 credits, so 10 to 15 classes as part of the coursework. There are professional programs. Programs like an MBA is going to be a more professional master's program that's going to kind of culminate in job opportunities and things like that. Or you can do a research master's degree. And those final projects, kind of those final components for master's programs, sometimes you have an internship requirement, sometimes you have a capstone project requirement, and sometimes you have a thesis requirement. And a thesis is kind of like a shorter version of a dissertation. It's a long, extended research project that's going to be smaller in scope versus the dissertation process, but it is still a large independent research project. On the other hand, the PhD is anywhere from 4 to 7 years, so it's a much longer time commitment. It ends up being anywhere from 60 to 120 credits. Um, PhDs are definitely going to be research driven. That's kind of the function of a PhD, specifically a Doctor of Philosophy. And again, it's going to end in that dissertation. Um, this is kind of an example timeline of what a PhD might look like, that 5 year program. The ultimately, the timeline of your PhD is going to depend on what your institution is looking for, what your kind of educational background is. So, in the first year, you are working on coursework. You're likely taking things that are considered prerequisites and methods courses to make sure that you are prepared to conduct research in that large independent research capacity. And you'll work on establishing your advisory committee. So these are going to be the faculty members that are overseeing your dissertation process throughout the whole time that you're working on it. If you are coming into your PhD program with a master's degree, there's a chance that you'll have fewer prerequisite courses to take. So if you have a master's coming in, this 5 year program could be more like a 4 year program. But you're not required to have a master's degree coming into all PhD programs. And so you have the opportunity, oftentimes in the United States, to earn your master's degree along the way to a PhD. So In this timeline, approximately at the end of year two, you could complete your master's degree and have that awarded, and then continue the process to complete your PhD. In the first year, you might be asked to take preliminary exams. These are not always required. It kind of depends on your program, but they are subject specific and pretty comprehensive. They just want to make sure that you have the base level knowledge that you need to move forward within the program. Your year two is also going to be pretty coursework heavy. You're going to start taking courses about your specialization, so whatever kind of subset of your subject you're interested in, and you'll likely take some advanced methods courses. You'll also start developing your research proposal. This will be the proposal for your dissertation, and you'll present this to your committee and likely to the executive part of your graduate school to make sure that it fulfills all of the requirements of a dissertation or a PhD level research project. In your third year, you'll take your qualifying exams. Quals are an important part of the PhD process. Sometimes they're called different things at different institutions, but they are typically combination written and oral exams. So you'll likely have to write several essays and then talk about those essays with your advisory committee and other staff members or faculty members at your institution. If you pass your qualifying exams, you are admitted to candidacy. So in your first 2 years, you're considered a PhD student. Once you pass your quals, you are considered a PhD candidate, which means that you have met all the requirements to be considered for a PhD. Every eligible PhD student is required to take the qualifying exam. If you receive a passing score, you become a PhD candidate and you can maintain regular progress towards your PhD. Through the exam, the purpose of the exam is to make sure that you have established a sound research program, which would be sufficient to graduate. You have the ability to carry out the research program, so you understand your methods and kind of the steps that you need to take to set up your project and your research study, and that you have adequate knowledge of relevant literature and kind of that background in your field to be successful in the research enterprise. Once you pass your quals and have become a PhD candidate, you will start on your dissertation research process. This is kind of where the PhD can either shorten or become a longer program, depending on how long it's going to take you to conduct your research and write your dissertation. This is where 5 years becomes 7, depending on the research and your writing style. So this is where it becomes a very independent process, and it's important to have kind of those organizational skills and time management skills that can carry you through these steps. So in year 4, you are conducting your research and you are analyzing your findings and interpreting them to kind of make that conclusion, and you'll start drafting your dissertation. Again, the dissertation is a 300 to 500 page comprehensive, extensive research document that outlines your findings and makes an argument regarding those findings and functions as your contribution to the literature. So you spend the first 2 years kind of learning about the state of the field and what is happening in your subject, and then you spend the next several years contributing to the conversation that's happening in the literature. In your fifth year or sixth or seventh, depending on how your dissertation process goes, you'll complete the draft of your dissertation. You'll want to make sure that you format it to your institution's guidelines. I know at Texas Tech we have a pretty comprehensive dissertation formatting guideline posted on our website, but also we have folks on our staff who are responsible for making sure that those dissertations are formatted correctly. And then you will go ahead and defend your dissertation. The defense process for a dissertation is kind of like the final project. You will present your findings to your committee and oftentimes any members of the public who are interested. and your committee will have the opportunity to ask you questions and kind of make sure that you understand the research that you're presenting. And if the committee decides that you've done a sufficient job of defending your dissertation, that you have clear understanding of the work that you've done and kind of what you're contributing to the literature, and that your findings are sound, then they are able to. This is when they'll decide whether or not you have achieved your PhD. And so, oftentimes, once a defense is happening, in the few that I have been in the audience for, they go through the oral presentation. The committee asks questions about the presentation and the research. The committee will then send everyone out of the room, the audience and the student, and then they'll bring the student back in for kind of oral critiques and feedback. And it's really special when a student will pass their defense because the committee will welcome them into the room with the title of doctor. So it's very exciting to pass that dissertation defense. And you do earn your title of doctor. From there, you can participate in the commencement ceremony and kind of celebrate that you have passed your dissertation. So it's important to consider who gets a PhD when you are making a decision as to whether or not you are someone who should get a PhD. Just about anyone can get a PhD. Some PhD programs will require a completed master's degree. For instance, at Texas Tech, the history PhD program does require that you have a master's degree before you start the program. But other PhD programs do not require you to have a master's degree. At Texas Tech, our psychology programs, so counseling psychology and clinical psychology, are actually only offered at the PhD level, with kind of an integrated built-in master's program. So when you are deciding to pursue your PhD, keep an eye out for whether or not you're required to complete a master's in advance. PhD students are all ages, from freshly graduated to mid and late career professionals. Oftentimes in your cohort, you will have a variety of ages and a variety of experience levels, from 20-year-olds who just completed a master's degree or even just completed their bachelor's degree to folks who have been in their industry for a long time. Some strong and important traits to consider that kind of correlate with successful PhD students is being comfortable working independently and being internally motivated. So those years that you're working on your research and your dissertation are largely self-directed. You'll report back to your committee, but a lot of what you're doing is managing your own time and making sure that you are completing those steps to continue to progress you towards completing your dissertation and defending. So being comfortable working independently with not a lot of oversight or instruction and being internally motivated is uniquely key for being successful in the program. PhD students are also passionate about research. More than half of the program is research focused, is completing that dissertation. So making sure that you are excited about your research, that you enjoy conducting your research is a great way to make sure that you are able to stick with the program and see it through. It's helpful to enjoy academic reading and writing. You'll be doing a lot of academic reading in those first few years when you are getting an idea of the conversations happening in your discipline and the research happening in the field. If you are someone who is interested in a more theoretical versus like a lab-based research, so if you are someone who's interested in history or in English, you're going to be doing a lot of reading. There's not as many kind of lab opportunities for certain fields. So lots and lots of reading. And with a 300 to 500 page paper, there will be lots and lots of writing. So enjoying academic reading and writing is great, but tolerating academic reading and writing can also serve you through a PhD. You're also going to want to have a clear idea of your path of study. So when students are pursuing a PhD, it is helpful to have an idea of what you're looking for in terms of research. If you have a strong guiding question that is motivating you to pursue a PhD, that is a good sign that you will kind of have that motivation and that drive to complete your program and continue to enjoy your research. It also is helpful for PhD admissions to kind of help you decide on where you should pursue your PhD. Um, so having an idea, maybe through prior reading that you've done, maybe you identified questions that weren't being asked when you were previously doing research or reading for your classes. Uh, so coming in with an idea of what your plan is for your dissertation, kind of where you want to contribute to the literature, is super helpful for kind of staying on track and directed. So we kind of know a little bit more about what a PhD is and who gets a PhD. But why are people getting a PhD? There's a lot of reasons to pursue a PhD. If you are passionate about the research that you're going to be doing or the subject that you are interested in, a lot of the times in fields like higher education or in special education, we see students who have very strong passions about their field and the research that they're going to be contributing to. If you are interested or exciting to contribute to the discipline that you're studying, if it is, if you have identified a gap in the literature and you are excited about the opportunity to be the research that fills the gap in the literature, that's a great reason to pursue a PhD. PhD programs also give you a really significant opportunity to develop your soft skills. So time management, you'll be managing your time pretty significantly in those dissertation years. Um, Once you pass your qualifying exams and become a candidate, and all you have left to do is do your research and write your dissertation, in the United States, sometimes they'll call those students ABD, all but dissertation. So when you are ABD, you are doing a lot of time management. You're going to want to make sure that you're managing your time, not only conducting your research and collecting your results, but also making time to write and analyze those results, as well as balancing a social life, because you're going to want to make sure that you are taking care of yourself and kind of leaving your PhD research bubble to make connections with people and kind of continue those basic human needs. You'll also develop your teaching skills. Oftentimes, our PhD students will be listed as the instructor of record on classes. This is a major way of funding a PhD is through teaching assistantships or part-time instructorships. So you will absolutely develop your teaching skills as part of your PhD. Even if you aren't someone who receives a teaching assistantship or an instructorship, you likely will improve your teaching skills just from being in the program. A lot of the coursework that you'll do and kind of the discussions that you'll have with your faculty members on your advisory committee is very much feedback based and like conversational. So having the ability and developing those conversation and teaching skills is going to be a huge part, even if you're not explicitly teaching throughout your program. You'll develop, you'll do a lot of networking as a PhD student, not only with your faculty members at your institution and your fellow PhD students, not only in your cohort, but also just at your institution. But also doing research gives you the opportunity to present that research at conferences and industry meetings, which gives you the opportunity to be in the same room as a lot of industry leaders and nationally recognized researchers. So there are a lot of networking opportunities that come with pursuing a PhD. And you'll also improve your public speaking and presenting skills. So presenting the oral part of the qualifying exams, presenting your dissertation at your defense, presenting your research at these different conferences that you have the opportunity to present at, will all help develop your public speaking and presenting skills. And all of these soft skills that I mentioned here are super critical when you are pursuing jobs in academia, but also if you are pursuing jobs outside of academia, in the private sector, in the nonprofit sector. These are super useful skills to have. Some folks are also accomplishing career goals by completing their PhD, whether they are looking for upward mobility in their job, so they want to continue on a promotion path, or they would like to break into kind of a new industry or a similar industry. Um, Achieving a PhD and becoming a doctoral degree holder can definitely help accomplish those career goals. There are a lot of opportunities for careers with PhDs. The one that everyone kind of mentions and thinks about first for PhDs are careers in academia. So obviously you could go into teaching in higher education if you are interested in being a university professor or a faculty member. Having a PhD is oftentimes a prerequisite for teaching in at the college level. You also have the opportunity to participate in university research. We research universities across the country. I know at Texas Tech, we definitely do hire postdocs, so students who are postdoctoral, who have received their doctoral degree but are interested in contributing to research and continuing to do that research. So we have a pretty robust postdoctoral research enterprise at Texas Tech, and getting a PhD is a prerequisite for that postdoctoral research. You also can be a consultant for your field. If you have a PhD, that is oftentimes the highest honor that you can get in any given discipline, which means that you are positioned as kind of an industry leader. So you could be consulting for um, environmental companies, you could do business consulting. They, you just kind of become an expert in your field by means of completing your PhD program. There are research opportunities in the private sector for PhDs. Places like pharmaceutical companies are looking for PhD holders in things like chemistry or biomed. Um, Also, engineering research, places like aerospace are looking for PhD holders. Supervising and managing roles are often held by PhD holders. So management analysts or instructional coordinators, things like that, are often PhD holders. And then just industry leaders. So the folks who are in these private industries who are kind of leading the pack there oftentimes have a PhD or their equivalent doctoral degree. So receiving a PhD not only positions you as being an industry leader, it shows that you have a comprehensive understanding of the discipline, but also it shows that you are committed, that you are determined, and that you have these soft skills that are developed throughout a PhD program. Our internal research at Texas Tech is showing that actual disciplinary knowledge is number 8 on the list of things that hiring committees are looking for in private industry. The first 7 things on the list of like skills that hiring leaders want you to possess are soft skills. So things like problem solving and teamwork and communication. So developing those skills throughout a PhD program is critical for being competitive in the job market, especially at some of these higher level sort of positions. So now that we know what a PhD is, who gets a PhD, and why they're getting a PhD, you've got to ask, is a PhD right for you? You're going to want to ask yourself, does this fit with my long-term goals? Is pursuing a doctoral degree going to get me closer to my dream job? Is it going to help me achieve the things that I want to achieve in the future? Can I handle the time and financial commitment? A PhD program is often 5 to 7 years long. And so this is a long time to effectively leave the workforce because you're going to want to be focused on your PhD, on your courses, and on your research. Um, there is a pretty considerable finances are a consideration. A lot of PhD opportunities are fully funded, but even with a fully funded PhD, the stipend that you receive is going to be likely lower than you would if you were working a salaried job. So you have to consider those kind of financial sacrifices when you're making the PhD decision. You have to consider, do I work well without direct instruction or oversight? Because the dissertation process is very self-directed and kind of hands-off from an advisor perspective. You will check in with your advisor, but largely it is self-designed, self-directed research and self-paced writing. It's important to consider if that is a style of work that you are comfortable with. If you are someone who needs direct oversight or who needs kind of constant instruction, it might be a tough program for you. And then you also want to consider if you are interested enough in your topic to study it for several years. Getting a PhD is a great opportunity in terms of career mobility and in terms of furthering your education. But if you are getting a PhD because you think that you should, or because someone has told you that you should, or something that I hear, you want people to call you doctor, um, it's probably not going to be enough to keep you motivated through that whole 5 to 7 year process. So you're going to want to make sure that you have passion for your subject. So you will actually be incentivized to continue to work towards completing that PhD. So if if your answer to any of these questions, kind of as you're asking yourself these questions, is no, maybe not, really anything besides a very excited absolutely, um, it's important to consider if a PhD program is the right next step. But if you have an excited yes for all of these, if this fits with your goals, if you can handle, if you're prepared to give that 5 to 7 year commitment and the potential sacrifice of um, potential financial gain or workforce experience, if you are well equipped to work independently and you're excited about your topic, it's time to think about how to get started. So, an important part of choosing a PhD program is choosing a program that has a good fit. So, you are going to want to look for faculty mentorship opportunities. This is a good place to kind of leverage the reading that you're doing. So, in your degree that you're pursuing now, or maybe that you pursued previously, you have been reading the literature and kind of getting an idea of what kind of work is being done. You can see what faculty members, what research that you've read, if those faculty members are in a teaching position at their institution. So it's pretty common for students to find a research paper that they enjoy or that they're inspired by and apply to institutions based on the research that the faculty members are doing. So kind of narrowing down who your list of academic celebrities are to find a program that could be a good fit for you. Oftentimes, a PhD program is pretty narrow in scope, and so you're going to want to find a faculty advisor or an institution that has background knowledge in that subject to kind of support you through that process. You'll want to look into research facilities, especially if you are someone who is in a hard science or a more hands-on kind of practical science. Having access to research facilities that can support your research is going to be key for deciding where you want to embark on your PhD journey. For instance, if you are interested in mechanical engineering or structural engineering, Texas Tech has the Vortec tornado generator. It's a facility off campus that is able to simulate up to an EF4 tornado on demand, which is super useful for our students who are interested in things like storm prevention and mitigation. And that's a facility that is pretty unique to Texas Tech. We also have the Oilfield Technology Center, which is a full-scale oil drilling platform that is available to our students to kind of practice and get oriented with as they are doing their petroleum engineering program. And so those are both unique to Texas Tech and could be reasons that you consider a PhD with us specifically. If you're interested in doing nuclear engineering, you're going to want to look for somewhere with a reactor available for student research. Texas Tech, unfortunately, does not have access to a reactor, so you would want to look for other institutions that might have that. You'll want to consider funding and cost of attendance when you are kind of making those decisions. Um, Most PhD programs, I would say, are funded, but not every PhD program is funded. So you'll want to make sure that you are looking in on institutional websites to see what kind of funding opportunities are available. They'll usually disclose if their PhD opportunities are fully funded. Um, Even if the program is fully funded, you're going to want to consider other potential costs of attendance, like how much it's going to cost to live in that city and kind of commute, or the relocation costs from Pakistan all the way to the institution that you're interested in. So, keeping in mind funding consideration and cost of attendance when you're making that decision. And then university location. This is also closely tied with funding. Um, as a PhD student, if you are fully funded, you will receive a tuition waiver and a living stipend. So you'll be paid for the work that you do for the institution. It's important to consider how that stipend will kind of stretch in your location. If you are interested in studying in the United States and you come to the city of Houston or the city of Austin or New York City, kind of these bigger cities, those are going to be pretty expensive to live in. And so considering how far your stipend can go in the city that you're moving to is important. Texas Tech is located in Lubbock, which is a relatively large city in Texas, but we have a relatively low cost of living. We are 19% below the national average cost of living, which means that your stipend could go further here than it would in another similarly sized city somewhere else. So, all things to keep in mind when you're deciding where to go. Also, consider proximity to an airport, especially if you are an international student traveling in. You're going to want to make sure that you can easily access the programs to apply to, um, just programs that you're interested in. You'll want to apply to a couple. You'll want to prepare your application materials. These are going to look different depending on the program, depending on the institution. Pretty typically for a PhD, we'll see academic letters of recommendation. At Texas Tech, we ask for anywhere from 1 to 3, depending on the application. You'll want someone who can speak to your aptitude to succeed at graduate school, specifically in a PhD program. They'll ask for a statement of purpose or a personal statement. This is a page to 2 pages about who you are, why you would like why you're interested in your field, and why a PhD is a logical next step for you, how that's going to help you kind of achieve your goals, and why this institution is the right fit for you. So, if you're interested in Texas Tech, you'd want to talk about maybe the faculty members who have attracted you to our institution, or the facilities that have attracted you to our institution, to kind of emphasize your application and that you are interested in this institution. You might be asked for a writing sample. The length of a writing sample is going to depend on the program. I recommend checking program websites and application requirement websites for more information about what length of a writing sample they're looking for. But pretty typically, they're looking for an example of academic writing, showing that you are familiar with citation formatting and you can write in an academic manner and kind of communicate an argument in your academic paper. And then you might be asked for your CV or your resume, depending on the application. So these are pretty standard, I'd say, for PhD applications. They might vary depending on where you're going to apply to or what institution or what discipline you're applying to, but these are pretty standard. Also, you should consider Texas Tech. Texas Tech University is a great institution. We offer over 65 PhD programs, and we have dual degree options. So if you are interested in something like a biology PhD, but also interested in pursuing an MD, a medical doctorate degree, you have those opportunities with us. We offer dual degrees, oftentimes with our business school, with our law school, and with our medical school. So if you are interested in receiving a dual degree or pursuing a dual degree, we have those opportunities. Texas Tech University is in the top 9% in awarded doctoral degrees out of all United States institutions, according to the National Science Foundation. This is my favorite kind of ranking or number about Texas Tech. We are number 42 in the nation in completed doctoral degrees. So this means that not only do we have a lot of doctoral students starting their journey with us, but we are in the top 9% of institutions that are ensuring that our students are finishing their doctoral journey with us. So we are fiercely committed to student support and making sure that our students are supported through the process, are completing that dissertation process, those 3 to 5 years of independent research, and defending their dissertations successfully. Our commitment to student support is very clear in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom, because you are a student in the classroom, outside of the classroom, on campus, off campus. We want to make sure that we are taking care of you. You have access to the Graduate Center with us, which has resources for academics. There's statistical consulting and library research consulting. We do professional development workshops to help develop those soft skills that I was talking about before. And we also do social and networking events for our students to ensure that you are connecting with other students and performing self-care in the way that you need to continue to be successful. The Graduate Writing Center is a writing center exclusively for our graduate students, where you can meet with our professional writing staff and work through parts of your writing. Whether it's for class or not for class, you can bring them anything from a rough draft to finished chapters of your dissertation, and they can talk through them and work with you to develop that chapter or that paper. They also offer writing workshops and writing groups where you kind of meet with a group of students, oftentimes fellow PhD students, and you have writing time that you've blocked out every week. And they offer thesis and dissertation boot camps. So these are week-long programs, boot camps and completion camps, week-long programs where you will come to the Writing Center, work on your project with fellow PhD students, and there's a tangible culture of support in these spaces. They cater lunch to make sure that you can kind of focus on writing and not have to worry about going to find lunch. It's a really great opportunity. I am always delighted when I have the opportunity to go to one of their writing boot camps. And it's a really great resource for our students. We also have a comprehensive Office of International Affairs that helps with everything from the arriving to the United States process through the international student life process. They assist with, they host cultural events, including things like, I think they're doing a World Cup event this this summer to kind of encourage student pride in their home countries. But they also help with things like airport pickup, and they have resources for finding a place to live once you get to the United States. So it's a great opportunity for our international students. We offer a 22-to-1 faculty-student ratio at the institution, but as a PhD student, you have more direct access to your advisor. So you are oftentimes working one-on-one or in very small groups with your research advisor. So you have these opportunities to build connections with industry leaders, with nationwide and worldwide recognized faculty members and researchers. We offer more than 60 specialized research institutes that give our researchers the opportunity to work collaboratively and interdisciplinarily with other institutions, other disciplines and other programs across campus. So if your big research question that you're considering, excuse me, is more interdisciplinary in nature or has some overlap with other disciplines, you have the opportunity to work through one of these research institutes to have lots of different folks with different backgrounds working towards your research. And living in Lubbock, the cost of living is 19% lower than the national average. So your PhD stipend that you receive um, has a lot more purchasing power in Lubbock than it would maybe in a larger city, which is really great for our PhD students who are considering, who are living on a stipend and pursuing their degree. So if you are interested in Texas Tech, which I think it's pretty awesome, you are welcome to reach out to us at graduate.admissions@ttu.edu. You can also give us a call at 806 742 2787. We are at TTU Grad School on all social media. Instagram, we're on X, the Everything app, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, and we're on LinkedIn. And you can also visit choosegrad.ttu.edu to access our grad school website for more information. So with that, we've talked about what a PhD is, who gets a PhD, why you might pursue a PhD, some things to consider when deciding if a PhD is right for you, and then how to get started and find the PhD program that would be the best fit for you. Yeah, I want to thank you all so much for listening to my presentation. I hope that this was helpful. If maybe you were considering a PhD, but you weren't sure if it was the right move for you, or if it was a logical next step in your career trajectory, I hope that this kind of helped. If not, answer that question, then to kind of give you some guidance as you are deciding kind of what the next step is. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and start answering some of these Q&A questions. I think I'm going to leave the contact information on the screen just in case, if it will let me. So someone has asked, is a PhD always funded? This is a great question. Funding consideration is an important part of making your decision on where to attend. A PhD program is typically funded, but it is not always funded. So you're going to want to make sure that you are looking for fully funded opportunities or that you are ensuring that you have a funding package offered to you when you're receiving your decision. Someone's asked, are you not allowed to work if you're a PhD student? This is also a great question. So there's a couple confounding variables to this. So PhD students are welcome to work. Oftentimes you'll get hired at the institution either as a teaching assistant or a research assistant. This is helpful for getting a stipend or offsetting your cost of attendance. International students, specifically, per US visa guidelines, are only allowed to work on campus. So if you are an international PhD student, you have to have campus employment. So there's no external employment opportunities for our international students. But also, oftentimes, PhD programs will ask that you don't have a separate job or another job outside of the institution to allow you to focus on your research, on your work, and kind of completing that PhD process. So, are you allowed to work as a PhD student? Sometimes, oftentimes through the institution. If you have questions about your background, about kind of your stats, your applicant profile, and whether or not you would be a good fit for our programs or other programs that are available, I recommend reaching out to the institution, graduate.admissions@tt.edu, and we can connect you with your department. Um, the admissions decision ultimately is going to be made at the department level, and so the program advisor and the folks that are closer to the program are going to have better insight as to what they're looking for in a PhD candidate, or in other programs. If so, someone's asking about an education gap, but professional experience in the meantime. If you are far removed from higher education, but you have been working, you are absolutely welcome to apply for a PhD. Oftentimes, we have folks who are mid to late career professionals applying for their PhD. So you, especially if you have professional experience that is kind of in the time that you have an education gap, you are welcome to apply. Oftentimes, that is an advantage for someone applying for a PhD. How important is prior research experience compared to publications when applying for funded PhD positions? This is a great question. PhD programs, especially if they're going to offer you funding, are going to want evidence that you are prepared to conduct research. So having prior research experience, having letters of recommendation from PIs or lab leaders, is going to be super important for demonstrating that you are prepared to continue to conduct research. In terms of publications, there's not like a magic number of publications that you need. Having publications obviously is great. That looks great on your CV and great on your kind of your personal research profile, but it's not a requirement by any means. Having research background is great. For a PhD specifically, I think research background is especially helpful, because a PhD, as we discussed, is a research degree. There are other doctoral degrees that are have less of a research emphasis. And so if you are in a field that could do something like a DBA, a Doctor of Business Administration, or a DPA, a Doctor of Public Administration, a DPH, a Doctor of Public Health. These are all programs that are, I'd say, less research intensive, but still doctoral level programs. If you are interested in studying with an institution or with a specific faculty member, I do recommend reaching out to them, keeping in mind that it is summer vacation here, so some faculty members are off doing research or not teaching or involved in the institution at this time. If you have reached out to a potential advisor or a professor and it's been a month and you haven't heard back, you can send a polite follow-up, just to see if maybe they overlooked it in kind of the end of semester shuffle. But not every program will require you to secure an advisor before you apply, but I definitely recommend reaching out to the advisor that you're interested in working with. Making those connections and kind of establishing those connections before you apply is a great way to have recognition when you do apply. If your advisor happens to be on the admissions committee, that's a great way for them to kind of flag your application and say, this student has reached out to me, we've communicated, they are very driven and motivated. So connecting with professors and potential advisors is a great idea. If you are someone who is removed from education or higher education, but you've been in industry for a while and are um, you are welcome to submit professional letters of recommendation. You can give us, we can have um, supervisors and folks that you've worked with before give letters of recommendation. Um, Academic letters of recommendation are going to be preferred for a PhD context, just because this is a higher academic degree, it's a research degree. But if you don't have those contacts in education, um, or if you have stronger recommendations from a professional perspective, you are more than welcome to submit professional recommendations. At Texas Tech, we don't have any sort of GPA minimum or any kind of test score minimum. We're actually GRE optional at this time. So if you don't submit a GRE score, you won't be penalized for that. If you have a strong GRE score, obviously we recommend submitting those. But you won't be penalized for not submitting a GRE score. Um, we are a holistic review institution, so everything you give us as part of the application process will go into making that admissions decision. So if maybe you are worried about maybe a low GPA or something along those lines, having strong letters of recommendation or strong personal statement, these are all things that can kind of help bridge the perceived gap that you see in your application. I'm seeing a lot of really great questions coming in, but it looks like we're getting kind of close to that. I think it's almost 7 o'clock there. Um, so if you have a question that I haven't answered, please feel free to email us at graduate.admissions@ttu.edu. Um, there is a lot of information, especially when considering applying for a PhD, and I want to make sure that I can connect you all with the best information possible. Um, if you have questions about programs that we offer or anything along those lines, I am happy to answer those via email as well. I will be keeping an eye on the inbox today. I guess for the next couple hours. It's 9 a.m. here, so it's a little bit of a time difference, but I will keep an eye out for any emails from students from this webinar if you guys have any questions, and try to connect you to the best resources possible.
Thank you so much for the wonderful webinar, and thank you so much for all of our students for coming here. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Bye bye.